260. What a nice round number. Episode 260. So this is the third time I've started this episode. I've had several different ideas on how to do it and what to say. My first attempt, I was in a bad mood, so it was very crabby. Not a good way to end a 5-year experience. I just started my second one, and Gracie called, so I didn't stop recording, and I started talking to her and completely lost track of where I was, so I just kiboshed it. And now here I am. Number 3, 1,000 tiny steps, 5 full years. First, I'm going to give myself a little bit of a pat on the back. What I do in situations like this is I think of all the things I didn't do. I never monetized. I didn't grow my listenership. My highest episode was like 2 years into my podcast, and it's been a slow decline ever since. All I do is look at all the ways I feel I failed. However, I did create 260 episodes, and I firmly believe that every single one of them has value and meaning and can be helpful to somebody in some way. If you are a relatively new listener and have not listened to the entire podcast, jump around season to season and listen to some. I have some plans to keep promoting the podcast, and I don't think 1,000 Tiny Steps is forever a thing of the past. I do think that I need to take a life shift right now. Shout out to Matt Galooly, Life Shift. I need to take a little corner turn and go in a different direction. Hence the pause, the break, the goodbye for now, the I'll see you when I see you, goodbye to my podcast. So here I sit in August of 2026, and I sat in the yellow room. It's the room behind me that you can't see when I recorded my first podcast. It was a hot summer sunny day. It's a hot summer sunny day right now. And I had all these hopes and dreams about what the podcast would be. I will tell you, I did not know that I would make it 5 years, so that's exciting. I thought it would be much bigger and better than it is, but I also know that my life being what it is, the fact that it continued 260 times is noteworthy. To get ready for this, I re-listened to episode number 1, and the biggest thing I noticed is I was a bit more uncomfortable talking, and I didn't string a story together as well as I can now. And I also think you develop a relationship with your editor, and as we went along, he began to understand my wonky all over the place-ness and began to edit really creatively and good for me. In my first episode, I just went through my life. I introduced myself, who I was, where I lived. So in that episode, on that day, I was at the dreaded 5-year mark of having lost Molly. I was 6 months postpartum, which is still crazy hormonal. I was in a devastating, terrifying reality with Roy. Found out a lot of truth about him that was very hard for me to handle at the time. And I didn't know if I would survive it. I was in a really, really tricky place with Kenny. Jack's birth brought up a lot. And, all the TV coverage we got wanted to create this happy, fluffy family. And that was a very difficult facade to create. I've always been authentic. And so that was hard. And Gracie was in love with Jack, of course, but still very wishy-washy about the fact that I had a baby in the first place. A lot was going on. My Mr. Higgins' dad was still alive. My parents were living a very, very different life than they are now. Dad's in heaven and my mom is here. Gracie had not yet begun her Disney experience. She had had the pre-COVID audition, and then COVID came and kiboshed all that. So she was just in the process of thinking, maybe I'm ready to try to go to Disney now. Life was very different. The room I'm sitting in was white, and it had a mattress on the floor, and I slept on that mattress with Jack for a long time. And my little recording studio was a corner of the yellow room surrounded by books and boxes and closet materials. When I started this podcast, it was prior all the TV show coverage, so it looked like a closet. And then I spent a good amount of time cleaning it up and getting it ready for TV coverage, and now it is back to being really a closet. And essentially right now that's because of my mom moving in and us sort of just throwing everything everywhere to create space for her. This is a big piece of my break from podcasting and a lot of outside of the house active things. I need to fix my house. I need to make it a livable space that doesn't give me huge stress and anxiety when I pull into the driveway, which it does now. In the beginning of my very first podcast, I start by talking about my childhood, and what blows me away right now is I preface my childhood by saying it was relatively normal. And when I really, really analyzed my childhood, there was nothing normal about it. Nothing. Sexual abuse, family separating, family getting back together, me having to live with my abuser all through middle school and high school, all through high school rather. I look back on that now and there's nothing normal about it. And then I go to high school and I'm asthmatic and I never took PE, and I fall in love with a teacher who ends up being my coach, and I start running, and then I go to college for free. So none of that is normal. None of that is typical. Zero, zero, zero. Then I go off to college and I'm the first female All-American at Boston University, which was a huge accomplishment. One that to this day I diminish by saying, well, it only happened once. I should have been so much better than I was. Okay, well, Barb, you were pretty darn good. And I had this amazing experience living in Boston and running for Nike and all of that. I start with all of that. Then I talk about coming back home, and ostensibly for a year and staying here. I still am. 30 plus years later, I'm still right here. 37 years later. Wow. I talk about my journey as an educator and a teacher and a coach, and then meeting Roy and Crazy Amy and losing my job and being forced to resign and all of that, which of course then led me into the CrossFit and all of the ways that my CrossFit reality continues to help me. I went through all of it, and I have talked at length in so many podcast episodes about all of these things. If you haven't listened to them all, they're out there. I just went through my life, the big things, the job loss, losing Molly, having Jack, creating Jack, the brain tumors, Kenny's kidney transplant, Rachel. So many aspects of my life are hugely impactful, and as a fictional character, quite unbelievable. I wrote a book. I had not published Motherland when I started this podcast. So many things have happened in the 5 years that I believe were impacted and helped along by doing a podcast. I think what I've liked most about it, this whole process, is the people I've met, the guests I've had on my podcast, and the podcasts upon which I've been a guest. And the number of the people I've met and been guests on their podcasts and had them on mine are no longer podcasting. So part of me is a little sad to join that crew, but I have a couple of things on the back burner, so I think it won't be a long respite from the world of podcasting. When I first sat down for episode 1, I had an infant. I had a daughter that had not yet gone to Disney. I had a mother who was not yet a widow. I had a marriage that isn't a marriage, but we lived together as husband and wife. That was struggling. That remains the same. I had a messy house that became clean and now is messy again. So many things circle around, right? It's just the craziness of grief. Since starting this podcast, I have taken a couple of grief courses. I have taken a couple of entrepreneurial courses. I have read a pile of books, and I have learned and learned and learned. I've recorded a TV commercial in Utah. I've been on a billboard in the side of a building. Amazing things have happened to me that I've been able to share with you. I have recorded podcasts from France. I've recorded a podcast in Utah. I've recorded a couple of podcasts in Florida, and several here in Concord, in several rooms in my house. I've recorded podcasts at the McGregor's house when they were in England. So the only place I didn't record one that I went is Bali. And what a mistake that was. Why did I not record a podcast from Bali? I brought the microphone, that I remember. I just never did it. Maybe it's because I wasn't inside much. That could be. I have learned and learned and learned so much about life, about the nuances of life, about the things that we bring to one another, about how much I like talking to my computer or to my phone while I'm doing a Facebook Live and sharing my life. And although the numbers don't indicate a huge listenership, I can't go anywhere in my life, whether local or online far away, where on a very regular basis, somebody isn't saying, thank you so much for sharing everything you share. It makes my life better. It's all of that. I had an email today from someone that listened to the last episode and was just so grateful that I was willing to talk about how I feel and how aimless I can feel sometimes and wanting to matter. What do I do now, right? Why am I really stopping? What have I learned? Well, probably one of my biggest pieces of unfinished business as a podcaster is a season that I wanted to call The Rest of the Story. And what I wanted to do, it was a year ago, and I was at a point where I'm like, okay, where do I go now with the podcast? I've told my life story. And my thought had been to go back and retell stories and be completely honest. And every single story that I've told on this podcast, I've kept some of the deeper, painful parts out. And sometimes I did it to protect someone else. When I first started talking about my childhood sexual abuse or about Roy, I left my dad and Roy nameless. I no longer have left them nameless. I've done it in a way, I hope, that honors the fact that they're not here to tell their story. I mean, my dad can't now, but I would invite Roy to come talk publicly about anything I've said on the podcast. I have told the story of losing Molly, but I was paid a lot of money to not tell the truth, to be quiet and protect the bad people. I've told a lot of my job loss story, but I have left so much of that private. And what I would love to do, I have piles of emails and court documents from my whole experience. Again, I'd have to sit down and sort through it and commit hours and hours to doing it, but that would be an incredibly important story to tell. And a lot of very high-ranking, self-important people would not be happy with me sharing the things that they said and the actions that they performed. So in that, the rest of the story episode, my goal had been to be more honest, to retell several stories with the whole truth. But how it came out was vindictive and snarky, and I don't want to fight fire with fire. I don't want to be like they are. The hardest part for me is living in a world where my silence allows truths about me that are not true. So let me rephrase that. My silence, my paid silence, my mother telling me to be quiet as a child, my quote-unquote confidential separation agreement, the only time the silence has been helpful is the people that hurt me with it. You know, my silence around being abused by my dad didn't protect me or help me one bit. It made the whole process so much more damaging than it had to be. It told me that I was the one responsible for all of it, for dealing with it, for healing with it in an appropriate way, for not talking about it because I might embarrass the family or you wouldn't want daddy to go to jail, right? I had this whole list of responsibilities, finding out my biological reality. And then again, that was my secret to keep. And I'm the one that had to tell it. Very much learned in all of my experiences how much I have been put in the position of being silent. My job loss, my silence protects the Gene Connollys and the Chris Raths of the world, and a whole list of other people, the Lisa Lambs of the world, all the people involved in creating falsehoods about me, and then the whole Bo experience, David Lucy and his family, and all that they did to me, horrifyingly bad. And I've been quiet about it because part of me understands that lots of bad behaviors come from the traumas of the people involved in perpetrating them. But my goal with the rest of the story was to finally not be the one responsible for keeping the secrets of others, to protecting the bad people or the bad things that other people did. I was walking with Gracie this morning on her last day here before she heads back to France. And there's a quote I found. It's attributed to Miley Cyrus. Whether or not she actually said it, I'm not sure, but it's a pretty profound quote. And it really does speak to where my podcast journey has led me, because in telling my stories, I initially told them in a way that was very protective and polite and appropriate, and within the realm of my separation agreements and my lawsuit signatures, etc. But I had an experience with a school board member, and she accuses me always of trashing her. Oh, you always trash me. You call me a mean girl, right? I never actually trash her. I've gone back and really listened to the words that I say about her, and what I do is I share what she says to me. I share her treatment of me, and she tells me I'm trashing her, which is not true at all. This is the quote, and it's come back to me now so many times. I didn't talk badly about you. I talked about what you did to me. If that makes you look bad, that's between you and your behavior. Because telling the truth about my experience isn't bitterness. It's clarity. And I'm not responsible for protecting someone's image when they had no problem damaging my peace. Sometimes the truth only sounds harsh because someone benefited from the silence. The truth is, that's how I feel. I can share my story of what my dad did to me without saying a mean word about my dad. I can share my job loss. I can share my relationships with my teachers. I can share what Gene Connolly and Chris Rath did. I can share every detail with Amy and Roy and not speak ill of them. I can simply read an email exchange. I can share a text message. I can share an email. I can share a newspaper article. I can share an event or a happening. I can do all of those things with kindness and with clarity and with honesty and with balance, and those people will end up looking bad. But again, if I'm not saying the bad things, then I'm not making them look bad. This is the mindset. I could have used this quote a year ago when I was contemplating the rest of the story. So part of my future in podcasting, part of what I would like to do to continue to share my story is to talk about the really ugly parts, to be super honest about my drug use. I was relatively honest, probably about as honest as I could be, but, you know, we all have a bit of self-preservation, and I know that by sharing my actions, I will make myself look like a bad person. But again, that's my responsibility and my relationship between my actions and what they say about me as a human being. I'm going to continue my website, and I'm going to continue doing a weekly newsletter. I think I will make it a bit more blog-ish, and I would like to start archiving the emails and publish. I've done emails for two years now, I believe. I think I've done over 104 emails, I believe. Again, sometimes not quite on Tuesday, but every week for 2 years in email. I want to continue that. I want to continue a connection with the people that have listened. I want them to get an email in their inbox that has a link to whatever podcast episode I'm promoting for the week. Even if it's not my podcast, I want to provide a link for my blogs that are coming up and links for Molly B events. I want to build that readership. Sometimes I wonder if spending time on an email list really makes sense, a newsletter. Do people really subscribe to these things? I know I subscribe to a handful, and sometimes I just click on it and close it. So I'm not even reading it. Why am I subscribed to it? And I'm also going to go back to doing a lot of lives. I love my Facebook lives. Facebook doesn't hold those anymore, so they're not as meaningful as they used to be because they used to stay there. Unless I do a live as a recording and then post the video, it doesn't stay live. And quite honestly, I don't respond to people. I'll say hello sometimes when I see they're listening, but that isn't what makes the lives good, and I don't think it's why people listen. So I think if I'm posting a video, people would be just as likely to listen, especially if I make it known that that's how I'm doing it. I'll do some lives on TikTok, and I'll do some lives on YouTube as well. There's a podcast out there that is basically every Tuesday night they go on live and they do interviews with each other and they take questions from people. It's like a show. That sounds fascinating to me. That's an idea that's been in my head for a while. How it might come to fruition has nothing to do with 1,000 Tiny Steps. There is a local TV station here in Concord, your local access TV. I think a Wayne's World, right? So there was a wonderful human named Paul Brogan who used to do a show, like a monthly show on CCTV, and he would interview Concord residents. And I've been on there several times for track camp, for writing my book, school board, my brain tumors and having Jack. I was a regular for Paul, and he and I had a really special friendship. Paul's passed away, and his show has sort of disappeared with him. So I reached out to his husband and asked, would it be okay if I revamped the show? And so we're supposed to get together at some point and have a cup of coffee, but a thought came to me today at the new teacher's orientation for Concord School District that we don't have a local TV show anymore. How about if I do it as a podcast? I recorded a podcast episode at the TV station once when I interviewed a teacher. So I went to the former executive director of CCTV, who is now a teacher in the school district at the CRTC, and I spoke to him about my idea that I want it filmed so that it can be on YouTube, that it can be, people can watch it if they want, but I also want it to be a podcast and to be posted as a podcast on all the podcasting sites. And is that something that CCTV would do? You do pay a nominal fee to host a show, but it basically is to cover the hours of the workers. It's not a huge fee. And it would be a community show, and it would be probably just as listened to and watched as my current podcast is, because I talk a lot about Concord stuff. And it wouldn't just be fluffy. It wouldn't just be people that have done great things. It would be all sorts of Concord residents, all manner of things that happen in Concord. So he liked that idea. What I like most about it is I feel like it's a potential stepping stone for me having a live YouTube interview once a week podcast that starts with a live on YouTube. And then I save the live and post it as a podcast, but it's done live. So people who watch it live get the live experience, and then people who miss it get to watch it or listen to it as a podcast. So that's sort of my next thought process, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited that it's local and it can be a bit spontaneous. I'm excited that it will connect me with people in my town and create a more interactive community with me here. So that's one thing. The other thing I need to dive into is creating an author page. I have like a podcast Instagram page, and I have a Molly B Foundation Instagram page, and I have, Facebook groups for both of those things. And I have these things, and again, they're all over the place. But my friend Jen up the street, who is one of my guests, has written a book, and she is all over the place. She has spent the entire summer driving around selling her book at book fairs and local bookshops. She's really dove into it, which is what you do when you're an indie author. You have to sell your own book. And I've just been watching her, and I've been fascinated by it. And so I know that there's a lot more I can do to get Motherland into people's hands. And so that's something that's coming up for me that I'm very excited about focusing on. So look for Motherland experiences. And if you're listening and you have not bought or read the book, please do. You can listen to it on Audible for free. It's available on Kindle. It's available everywhere. Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble. I'm not sure if my local bookstore has any more that you can order from there or not. Because then if you want, I can autograph it for you. I also have a bookshelf full of them behind me, and I'm happy to, it's more expensive that way because you'd have to pay for shipping, but I'm happy to autograph one and send it along. If you have read my book, and I've asked before, please leave a review. And if you own a copy and you've read it, and you share it with somebody so that somebody else reads it. But I'll be spending a lot of time really trying to promote and share Motherland because I think it's important. The final thing that I'm doing, and when I think about my niche, right, finding a niche. So if I'm going to do a live, like a live YouTube live sort of thing, the one that I listen to a lot is all around women. It's called Where Are the Women? It's two females that host the podcast, and they do a live conversation once a week, and they have guests call in. And they talk about issues that affect women. So all sorts of things. Reproductive health issues, differences in pay issues, medical treatment issues, trans issues, gay rights issues, violence against women issues, all of it, just all of it. They talk about everything. It's fascinating. And I like that it's, sometimes there's mistakes, sometimes they goof and it's awkward. Sometimes it gets a little boring. It is what it is, but it's very, very authentic. I need to find a bit of a niche, which I'm all over the place. I can talk about so many things at length. I hate to stop talking about things. I guess that's the easiest way for me to describe where I'm at with everything. But those are things to look for. Look for me promoting Motherland a bit. Look for me promoting the Molly B Foundation a little bit. And look for me creating and advertising events, mostly local. So if you're not local, it could be hard to benefit from these things. But creating events that bring people together, like golf tournaments and camps for kids. I'm a certified High Rocks coach. This is something else I had not even heard of when I started this podcast. High Rocks, this crazy race experience that has taken off. I'm a certified High Rocks coach. So my plan is to start a high school class, High Rocks class for a PE credit, either doing it over the summer or maybe over the winter where kids aren't doing a sport. You have a season off from a sport, you need a PE credit, come do this. I do know that if I had to choose a niche for myself, it's that as a victim of child abuse, I've hated my body my whole life. And I use my body to process trauma. I exercise, I run, I swim, I cross-country ski. I've done so many things. I find my happiness through, I call it the mind, body, and spirit of fitness. I can address grief. I can address abuse. I can address poverty. I can address female issues. I can address so many things in my life through the mind, body, spirit of fitness. I do feel that that's an area that I'll look into a little bit. How is my family different? Jack is no longer 6 months. He's 5.5. He starts kindergarten in a week. I can't wait. He's going to an outdoor kindergarten. That's going to be fantastic. Out in the woods, it's going to be beautiful. Gracie heads back to France today. She's pulling into the driveway as I speak to continue her friendship with Queen Anna and hopefully to establish some performing opportunities, parades and shows and such. That's her plan. I'm going to miss her like crazy. We're planning a Christmas trip to Europe to spend time with Gracie. I'll be doing a High Rocks race in Paris in December, so believe me, I'll be promoting that. I would love to get some brand relationships with, I wear Topo shoes, which I love. I was a Nike athlete for a long time. I'd love to look into getting some brand ambassadorship opportunities for these brands as a 63-year-old High Rocks athlete. I think I could rank pretty high up to work on my running. I've really missed the running community and would love to reconnect with the running community quite a bit. So these are things that I'm called to do and would actually give me a lot of things to talk about. I've also thought of doing, when I reinvent the podcast, rather than every single week nonstop, having seasons where I commit to, recording 10 episodes. And boom, I record the 10 episodes and then they run for 10 weeks and maybe there's a week or two off or a month off before there's another season. I know a lot of podcasters that do it that way. They aren't just continuous. So I have all these ideas in my mind. The biggest thing, though, which will happen once school starts and Jack is gone for the day, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off from everything, from coaching, not from working out. That I will continue. Kenny and I are going to get a dumpster and we're going to really, really clean out our house. Return items that don't belong to us, sell items that have a second life, give items away to people who need them, and throw away whatever is trash, and really, really create a much more aesthetic, comforting, feng shui sort of living space. I'm remodeling Coach's house right now. That's another thing. No, I owned Coach's house. I bought Coach's house before Jack came along. Being a landlord has been fascinating, but I've been remodeling Coach's house, putting the bathroom where the kitchen was, and then putting the kitchen where Coach's computer room was, and remodeling the upstairs bath. It's such a beautiful little house, and I love giving it new life while maintaining so much of its integrity. That's my next step, and a very good friend of mine is moving in. I'm going to leave that secret for now. So I have a lot to do, and a lot of it is centered right around here. Another thing I did not have when I started this podcast, I had this trauma bond with Roy, which I haven't spoken to Roy, other than glaring at him at a restraining order hearing in Newburyport in September, right when I started this podcast. I haven't seen him in person except maybe driving by him or spoken to him. And there was a time when I didn't think I could live, that I thought I would truly die if I didn't know how he was, if he didn't tell me he was okay. It's a very, very panically horrible way to live. And I'm That's not me anymore. I have strong feelings for him. I always will. But that was probably the biggest growth I've made since starting this podcast is that. And that's pretty intense. He's involved in everything I lost. He showed up and it was one thing after the other. So again, I say he showed up lovingly, but here I am 5 years in, ready to take a break and look ahead to what comes next. I'm peering over at my daughter Gracie over there. I'm going to wave at her. She's getting ready to go back to France. You know, that Disney thing that hadn't even started when I started the podcast. There had been a Disney audition that was ruined by COVID. And then right when I started the podcast, she did her Disney College Program application and got accepted. And I had 4 months to prepare for Gracie leaving the nest, sort of for the first time. So yeah, now she lives in France, has really left the nest in a much bigger way. Look for a much more locally based podcast. I will advertise the crap out of it. And it's not one that I have to, again, I can show up and do the talking, and it's a CCTV thing. I'm excited about it. Podcasting, it's less expensive for them as well. And advertising-wise and donation-wise, they take care of that. So it's not like I'm doing this on my own. I always talk about how I function so much better in somebody else's framework. You know, it's why I don't promote myself well. I won't have to promote it there either. It's within an existing structure. And I think sometimes I just function best that way. But I'm excited, and it will be very locally based, and I'm already brainstorming people to have on. I will hopefully reconnect myself with this podcast as I promote different episodes week to week, try to create, you know, a much more interactive website and blog and that sort of thing. So that's where I'm at. Early on, when I was looking to have regular things in my podcast, things I always say, things I always include, I honor Bill Haubrick, and I continue to honor Bill Haubrick. When he did the morning announcements at Concord High School, he always ended them the same way. He always said, "Have a good day, everybody." My very first episode, and I didn't realize I did this so early on, I talked about being good to yourself before you can be good to someone else. And I used the analogy of the oxygen on the airplane. If you don't put your oxygen on first, you'll pass out before you can save your baby. So put your dang oxygen on so then you can oxygenate your baby. So that was from my very first episode. So for the 260th time, be good to yourself. Be good to someone else. And as always, have a good day, everybody. Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter, a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.